Welcome, everybody, and welcome today to June 20th. This is the Regenerative Consciousness Rising podcast. Here we are again, and I'm so excited. I'm so happy to be here and to be live streaming to the Regenerative Consciousness community page and all of you wonderful, beautiful humans out there, and maybe other life forms too. And in honor of solstice, which is just really a beautiful and significant and very sacred time of the year where we honor and celebrate the height of the sun and the light. And I'm really honored, deeply honored to be joined today by three beautiful women who are going to speak about our topic today, which is on indigenous and sacred wisdom. And today, the reason why, we wanted to talk about this particular topic is that, especially in light of everything that's happening on the planet right now, and also in light of, I did post earlier, you may have seen Chief Orville's Looking Horse's call for everybody to pray on their land, on their sacred land, wherever they are, to be in prayer, to join him in prayer, for people to join in prayer everywhere on June 21st on solstice, and to pray for the earth. And he has made a very clear and very urgent call that this is a time, we really need to join together in prayer and let our collective hearts, minds, and spirits be joined in our desire to preserve and to support life and all that is good on this planet. So that said, that's what's happening tomorrow. I want to invite everybody to do that in their own way, whatever that works for you, whatever that means to you. Life, the land is sacred, even in your own backyard, wherever you are. So if you want to go out and just say a prayer in your own yard, please do so. But join this beautiful call for prayer on the solstice on June 21st. And to just open the prayerful and that sacred way of being and thinking and connecting. We're going to have a conversation here with these beautiful women, and I'm going to just give a very brief introduction to each of them, and then hand it over to them to share a little bit more about themselves before we go into talking about the subject, which is what is indigenous wisdom, what is sacred wisdom, and why is it so important today, especially in light of all that we're dealing with on the planet, and how can we bring that into our lives more? What does that actually look like and feel like for us? And how are these women, these beautiful women, doing this in their lives and bringing it to those around them? So I'm really happy to introduce Marilyn Begay, who is of the Dene Nation. And she has been a teacher of counseling and of behavioral health coordinator in an indigenous reservation. And she has a PhD in counseling and psychology. And she is a board member of the Dene Hatali Association. She's a board member of the Luna and Marilyn Sanctuary, which we're going to be talking about today. And she utilizes traditional indigenous approach to healing and Western cognitive behavioral spiritual counseling. She has her own healing practices and works with trauma and uses EMDR, and she works with youth using many different therapies. And she also works with youth in her within her tribe to reconnect them to their ancestral knowledge and cultural knowledge. And she is so many other things, and I'm sure she will share more of what I'm not saying here and missing so much. So I really am really grateful and really honored that she's here with us. And Lisa Grayshield is somebody, I'm just getting to meet Marilyn, so I'm really happy to meet her. But Lisa, I have known for many years now, and really honored that she's here. And she's joined me on a few different discussions over the years as well. And she's always just so wonderful and so full of knowledge and wisdom. And Lisa was also a professor of counseling at New Mexico, and she developed a curriculum called Indigenous Ways of Knowing and a book. And she's now working with her tribe on the Washoe Reservation, and she's helping her tribe reclaim land and healing, connecting with um, other tribes around. I think she's going to talk about this, but it's like the tribe in Russia. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, maybe I won't try to remember right now, but basically she's doing amazing things for the Washoe tribe and trying to bring some land and some stewardship back and some healing, and building a healing center there. And she's also a healer, and she's a counselor, and she's just amazing woman on so many levels. And Laura is somebody that is also part of this sanctuary. These three women are part of this Luna Soul Sanctuary, which you're going to be talking about later. And Laura is amazing healer. She was also a student of Lisa, who taught psychology, and so Laura is also now a psychologist, or she works in therapy, and she is in Southern California, and she is been in a journey of discovering and reclaiming her own Indigenous heritage, and has been on a long and deep self-discovery and healing journey. And she's she has a background, in addition to her counseling psychology, she integrates many natural modes of healing. And I know Lisa has told me that she sees Laura as a medicine woman. And so I don't know if that's how, Laura, how you would describe yourself, but that's how I'm seeing you through Lisa's eyes. So I'll introduce you that way. And so thank you for being here and for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, Marilyn, just to say a little bit more about yourself and introduce yourself, whatever I didn't say there.
Yes, good afternoon or good morning or whenever you guys are listening to this. I'd like to say Yate, meaning peace, peace amongst us with on the earth that we walk, and the cosmos that we continue on. Um, so that's how we usually greet each other on the res or when we meet another Dene people person. Um, I'm of four clans which belong to my mother and my dad, and then their parents too. Uh, they cheat me. No, what did eat me? Chin. Have so this chedo kia ani dasanale. That's the clan that I came to be in, and I'm honored to be here and to be part of this podcast. It seems to me that it is spreading the importance of spirituality in today's times, um, and we want to continue to walk that path of spirit, path of peace, and path of love, and we want to spread those words out to you all, and that each one of us here, we try to walk that path, and we're all on this journey towards helping people to find that path, and that I immerse myself in this in this lifetime to help people, transition from and their indigenous roots into a world of what is not so indigenous, in this world today, because we're westernized, and we are going against our own culture by living this other life that is not natural to us. So, and able to bridge the world, we have to have guidance to do that. And in order for guidance to happen, we have to have those teachers that have walked those paths, so that that's the work that I immerse myself into. And I I just finished two prayers today, and I'm on my way home, and I got to work tomorrow. Um, but I'm just I like I said, I this is just the path that I'm on. And when I was granted my this this part of my life, I was I was told not that I won't will never go back to the person that I was, and that the spirit will guide me. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Beautiful. Lisa, would you like to say more about yourself?
I'll say Hungamaheji, Washu Demomoket Letle Kashanari, Digam Dia, Lisa Grayshield, um, Digoy Frank Grayshield, De La Clinta Grayshield, um, Di Ama Louise Jackson, um, and Diguu Louise Tannheimer, and Ethlyn Jackson. The Northern Nevada area, Lake Tahoe area. I'm also Quechan and Paiute. So, kind of a product of Indian boarding school, and that meant boarding school. So, I have three daughters, beautiful daughters that are, were raised in a way that they honor the earth and they understand that we all have a responsibility, you know, indigenous thought process. I want to say first, we're really at a special time right now. We're a place, world where we all have access to a way of understanding that will regain our connectedness if we give ourselves the opportunity to step away from the technology and to spend time in nature, appreciating nature, understanding our water sources. Really it's earth, air, water, fire, and ethers. And it's so simple that it's profound, but indigenous knowledge is the kind of knowledge that brings us back to that kind of a universal understanding and reconnects us with our spirit. Not through, religion all plays a part in for all of us, and they're all beautiful, just like culture and all of those things. But an indigenous, I think it. I had read some definitions once by um, Carl Jung, and he wrote a definition of indigenous. And indigenous, we can use it very loosely, but at the heart of that word is the understanding that we stand in the center. It's we're in the middle, of all those seven directions: north, south, east, west, above, below, and all around. And in that simplistic understanding, we can regain a sense of who we are and kind of exit that competitive linearity in society. And it took me a long time to kind of to figure that out, because these understandings aren't things that, you learn in a university. In fact, what you learn is quite the opposite. And so yeah, I'll say that much right now because, there's a lot I could say, but I do want to say it's really an honor to be asked here by you, Jewel. We met at Standing Rock and you became my sister. And I love the story about how we met because it really does speak of two paradigms, kind of finding that connectedness. So, I really appreciate you and I appreciate your heart, and you have a good reflection for me in the way that you serve and how you pray and how really appreciate that you also are putting these messages out in the world, whenever you're feeling inspired and being a part of this worldwide movement of consciousness raising that is happening right now. I ran into a young Indian guy at the car wash, and he wanted to say, hey, who's your family? And we had just seen each other at a powwow, and he looked at me as an auntie and wanted to talk all about how things are really changing. Like it felt really good to watch all these young people dancing at this dance, this wellness gathering, that and that we're coming together like that in these ways to understand who we are, to relive our traditional stories and to bring them back to life in our dances and and you know it's that time in the world. So when I talk about indigenous knowledge, my journey, but the understanding that we're all a part of it and that each one of us have a journey, and that journey is really important. So indigenous means to be our most true authentic self. We say wakalet.
Thank you,
That's
Lisa.
me, myself.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
that's great. I mean, we're going to get into talking about what indigenous means in our next, as soon as we get started here. So you gave us a warm up there. And just so you know, your audio is cutting in and out a little bit. So I'm not sure what we can do about that, but hopefully most of us caught those pieces that went out. Um, thank you so much. And Laura, I'm so happy you're here. What would you like to share about yourself?
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much, Jewel, for putting this together, this conversation, and bringing us together like this. It's always really an honor and a gift to be able to share space, even though it's virtually, this virtual reality. Um, so, what else can I share about myself? My name is Laura Liliana Luna. I'm raised here in Southern California to Mexican parents and um, partly immigrated from Mexico, first generation, second generation, and along the way, I learned about more about who I am in searching my role in this world as trying to help people, trying to be in service and supporting the healing of others. I learned more about myself, but I got to experience all sorts of different healing modalities in Western psychology and in Eastern medicine and in Native medicine. And so I got to realize that my connection to my tribe is Chichimeca. I got to realize that there's such a wide world of understanding how to heal ourselves, and all very much connected to indigenous wisdom. So I went on this journey, as you were referring to, of healing myself, and through that, yoga and native ceremonies and energy medicines like Reiki. And so I teach Reiki, I teach energy medicine, I practice native ceremonies. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm an auntie. Um, I'm I'm in service. That's part of who I am, I guess, is being in service, and just really glad to be here. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. And yeah, so now that we're here and, just really honoring this, even though, and I know Lisa's talking about like getting away from the technology, and yet here we are. And so I know we all use it. And so maybe we can just have a moment here where we just really recognize and honor the sacredness of this non-local space that we're creating here, and that all those that are listening and watching and may watch the recording, that sacredness and the space that we're holding together in connection, it crosses time and space. It's non-local, and we are having this time together. And I'm just really inviting in the spirit, the creator, and just the yeah, just really inviting in the presence of the creator, and that that our words are held and the light is shine, and that whoever needs to hear what is being said here is who gets to come and listen, who happens to listen to this, that all our hearts might be touched in some way, and that healing is happening in this space, in this conversation. That's the intention that I'm holding here, and asking and inviting in honor of the solstice, in honor of the prayers of this time for the earth. So with that said, and as we speak, I just want to invite each of you at any time you want to stop and say a prayer, whatever you feel moved to do, please, please feel free. But let's start with this question of what, and I know, Lisa, you already began with talking about just a really intriguing thing that you were saying about what does indigenous mean. So I don't know if we want to pick up where you left that, but the first question really is, what does indigenous wisdom mean to you, and and how is that working in your life? And then we'll go into talking about how do we see it really um, needed in the world now, and how it can work in other people's lives. So I don't know, Lisa, if you wanted to start or somebody else want to start, I think we'll just let this be sort of a flow.
I'll start, but if I start cutting in and out, let me know and I can stop the video and it'll provide me a little more bandwidth.
Okay.
But I mean, so that's a big question that you asked. It's really big, what does indigenous wisdom mean to me? And it means a lot of things, It means the things that my ancestors did before my time in order to maintain a peaceful existence the way they did for hundreds and thousands of years. And and all the indigenous people all over the world, we're all indigenous, and I see that that's the thing that connects us, is because we are all at some point in our genetic makeup connected to a tribe, a group of people that lived in balance and harmony with nature, because that was what existence was about, was that connection to the earth. So, and we see that civilizations have, turned around in those kinds of understanding. We build these huge civilizations like in Mexico, and we can only speculate as to why.
You're starting to cut out a
And we
little
see
bit.
these patterns being repeated throughout history, and we're at a.
There we go. Yeah,
So can you hear me?
that might be a little better. Let's
Okay,
hope.
so okay. Um so really indigenous wisdom is as simple as taking the time to recognize who we are, body, mind, soul, and spirit, and growing and living the understanding that the earth is alive. And in that, when I, as a counseling psychologist, I began to understand wellness, not through the lens of all of the counseling psychology gurus that we were taught throughout our programs, and then all of these theories are categorized and made into therapy sessions based on a paradigm that's about gross national product, a paradigm that brings people into their ability to be a part of this structure as opposed to really finding out who we are. And it creates this middle class and all this political system and all those kinds of things. Indigenous wisdom is much deeper than that. It's an understanding that we ourselves are living an existence that is moving us further away from nature, and so we want to go back into it, because nature is the mind of God. In nature, we experience the mind of God. And so there's movements on the earth right now that are absolutely critical in our ability to return to indigenous. Those, and one of the, and so we identified what health and wellness is, and one of those is restorative and social justice endeavors all across the world right now. We're standing up for clean water and clean air, and stopping the pollution of our rivers and our lands, and finding alternative fuels and those kinds of things. So we're in a time that we have to address these things. And so the indigenous wisdom that is currently playing itself out, with all of these new ways of energy, I think in the at the end of the day is going to bring us excuse me, is going to bring us back to stillness. And so I'll just end right there on that one, you know. So thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Marilyn, I'm wondering if if you feel ready to share on this topic.
I'll let Laura go first.
So yeah, that's a big question, and I think I'm continuously discovering what is indigenous wisdom to me, but it's really simple to me. I guess it's very, very simple. It's um, really understanding our relationship with nature, our role in relation to nature, and us observing what nature does and using that as a model for how we should be behaving. And as Lisa was saying, we're in a time where we're recognizing that this is important. We're recognizing that the earth is alive and breathing, and that we need to honor what she's given us. And it's understanding how to be still, I think, too. A big part of, for me, indigenous wisdom is coming into stillness with myself and observing what is going on around me. What is my impact? What is the impact that we're making? Because I think, as somebody too who grew up disconnected from my indigenous tribe, and knowing inside of myself that there was more, that there was a connection to that I had this strong connection to nature, to Mother Earth, to the land. And it didn't make sense to me how people lived. You know, a lot of what was normal for me as a child, it didn't really make sense of how we were behaving and the things that we were doing. And so for me, it's that realization, that recognition that we're just a piece of it. We're just one part of it. We're not, we're not we've sought to control nature with all of our endeavors of industrialization. And what Lisa's talking about, gross national product, is a lot about producing and consuming. How much can we consume? How much can we produce? And how quickly can we do it? And the consequences of that behavior of us producing and consuming are the destruction of land, the destruction of nature, the destruction of families. And so that's like the opposite of indigenous wisdom. So now across the world, indigenous people are saying, no, we don't want this. We need to stop doing this. We need to stop digging. We need to stop destroying the land that we live on. How can we, unfortunately, I don't know how else to say it, but how can we take a dump where we sleep? Really, it's like, that just doesn't make any sense. Even animals know better than that. Wild animals know better than that. And we can't seem to understand that our behavior is affecting our life force, our sustenance, which is, well, part of the earth, but also, the stars, elements. But so it's a big question, hard to answer in just a couple of words, but for me, that's what it is. It's the realization that I am part of nature. Nature is part of me, and that if my awareness can keep growing about that, then I have to change some things about what I'm doing. I have to change how I'm consuming. I have to change what I do when I wake up in the morning. What am I doing when I wake up in the morning? What do I do when I go to sleep at night? Am I honoring the cycles, the natural cycles and rhythms of nature? Or am I forcing myself to wake up at a time and rush out to work and forget about everything else, right? Because I have to go work to make the money to pay the bills to do XYZ. And so now I don't have time to honor the elements and honor the cycles and natural cycles and rhythms that we need to honor, like even stopping for the summer solstice, right? It's like stopping. Let's stop, recognize that there's something that's more important than us and our little egos and our minds and the things that we want to do. There's something that's greater and bigger than us. And so that we need to stop, pause, and recognize that, honor it, hold it sacred, and give thanks. Give gratitude for all the gifts that we have, and for us also to learn how to be better, right? How do we be better? We need to learn how to be better too. So I'll stop with that much.
Beautiful. Thank you. Marilyn, you ready to share your view on indigenous wisdom and how that's showing up? How do you see that or hold that?
Oh, oh gosh. That's a loaded question. The wisdom comes from nature, comes from the fire, the water, from all living things. I guess, and the intelligence of the nature is not held up like it used to be. I guess to a normal person, okay, I'm walking and I'm in between the sagebrush and I'm going up the mountain. I'm just going on a hike, but actuality, these mountains, they speak, they have names, and they are ordained with certain intelligence. And these ways, these intelligence, we call upon for not just for ourselves, but for the help of others, to help others. Like for me, I'm just a vessel, nobody special. I just was some way, somehow, I don't know if I was born with it or for so many years I didn't want to take on this responsibilities of being a healer, and I just shrugged it off for so long until it made me kneel down by force and told me, hey, wake up, this is your road, don't deny us anymore. And it was a choice of life or death, and I chose life. And when I chose life, I chose indigenous knowledge ways, ceremonies. Ceremonies is a way of life. The more you understand it, the happier and more calm and peace you are, no matter what's going on around you. And that to understand that we're just a speck on the earth, and that we need to be humble, and that we can only control so much because we are limited in our intelligence, and not to go beyond that, and for the longest time I had to learn that, just to keep it right here in front of me, and that's about it. Can't go any further out, can't go back, can't. I'm not God, I'm just a person. And to understand that, and to carry that medicine is a big responsibility. It's hard. Sometimes it's a hard road, but you have to keep going. It's like you made a commitment one time in your life, and that commitment carries, and you're no longer driven by your humanly desires. One day you're going to be walking alone, and your greatest friends are going to be the nature and the stars and the ones that speak in between. It's not a person. So it's like that. There's like, you can't go back and say, I don't want this anymore. I tried that before. I tried stepping out, and I tried saying no more. I had enough, but You know, there's a greater force out there, and that force is beyond me. I do not dare to understand it because my mind is too limited and to understand these forces. But I acknowledge them, and I may make my requests, you know, in the most humble way, not to get above it or in front of it, but just to acknowledge them and make that request for healing for another person, not me. And it's for others. That's how I understand it. It's not really for to gain anything or to gain money or one time my cousin asked me, she says, does if you pray about it and we go to casino, do you think we'll win something? I looked at her and I said, that's just not what it's for. I said, whoever told you that's what it's for, that's not what it's for. It's to help someone in need, someone that's desperate for healing. And I don't know what else to say, but that's probably about it.
Well, Marilyn, your words really reach my soul. You know, because, well, first of all, I've had a very similar experience growing up, just feeling nature and talking to the trees and being the weird one in my family and my community, not knowing, you know, not fitting in with this world, you know, that everything talks to you and everything has a name. But also, but mostly because of just the way you speak and the way, I mean, not just what you're talking about, but the way you're talking to me, and just the humility. And it just, to me, I'm just making this connection right now about indigenous wisdom and humility. And I think of indigenousness myself. I see, I mean, Lisa, you and I have talked about many times, and you've often said, you know, we're all indigenous to the earth, and how I hold indigenous is really those that are really authentically connecting to the earth and the land on which they're living. And that requires a certain humility, because you're low to the ground. You're not full of yourself. You're full of nature, and that's a natural humility. And you really just you really present that, Marilyn, so beautifully. Well, all three of you do, but I'm just really touched, you know, and that's what you're inspiring me to share right now, about just like the connection between indigenousness and humbleness of being close to the earth. And I believe, you know, a great teacher said once, the meek shall inherit the earth. And I believe that to be true. And I believe that's why the indigenous wisdom is so important for the world right now, because that's the meek that will lead us to the way we need to go on this earth. So thank you for sharing. And I'm just so grateful to hear all of your wisdom. And maybe we can share, if do another round and share about how you see or feel this to be needed in the world yourselves. And how is that, how what does that look like to you? What, anything you want to say that you're inspired to say around what's happening in the world, and how that connects to the need for the sacred and reconnecting to indigenous wisdom. And we could just do the same round again, or however you want to go. However, whoever's inspired to speak.
I'll
Well,
jump
again,
Go, Lisa.
it's a big question.
Whoops.
Turn
Now
my
you're,
video off so that
yeah, turn your
it
video
doesn't.
off, and let's see if your audio comes through better.
Okay, am I coming through?
Yeah.
Okay. Really, what I would, really like to leave everybody with is that we're all medicine people, and the only person that we really truly heal is ourselves. And so when we begin to understand our responsibility to ourselves, everything else comes pretty natural. And the physical aspects, that's the least complex. That's why our indigenous medicine people are really powerful, in time, because number one, they're not obsessed with the physical kinds of things. They're more into the generations, in our communities. Traditional knowledge about how we used to live and how we used to eat and the things that we used to value is coming through now, and coming through, in a lot of ways to people all over the world. Indigenous medicine people, indigenous leaders are beginning to share their knowledge, and beginning to share the way that we think. Some of those ceremonies will always remain sacred and they'll always remain apart from that because the Western world wants to commercialize even the indigenous, and it becomes that kind of thing, um, and that can become damaging, at some level. In another way, I think that we can embrace all aspects of life as long as we understand, that we are connected to the earth. And so healing, it's important for us to follow the clues that Creator is giving us, like Marilyn was talking about. It's like, all of a sudden you're walking along and there's a voice or there's something that tells you what to do. And, learning the discernment instead of becoming weird about some of these things, which many people do, for a little bit sometimes until we recognize, until we learn to retrain ourselves, towards the vibrations and stuff of nature. But it's really an inward journey, that indigenous road. And it does manifest, around us in beautiful things and healing. And, we all have different ways that we're meant to be. And that's the journey, is to discover that, we're what we're meant to be, so we give back to our community, that we give back, that we have a reciprocal relationship with the earth, with our community, with ourselves, with our physical body even, that physical body is, has a cycle that is best honored through those cycles of nature. So that's just what I would leave everybody with, is the personal responsibility to find your medicine, be still for a little bit. There's a lot of research out there that says get out of your head and listen to nature. So, really grateful, I just, there's no message that I could tell you that Spirit isn't going to tell you when you sit still in that way, in a prayer way. So thank you, Jules.
Thank you. And yet our words can spark that inner voice in each of us, right? We spark that in each other. Thank you. Who would like to speak next, Laura? Or
Yeah, I've just been, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is because a lot of my work has focused around trauma and um, intergenerational trauma and historical trauma, and what that what all of that means to us, and how we behave and how we interact with others. And for me, what I noticed is the importance of indigenous wisdom and the benefit that it has to us, because we're so disconnected. We're so disconnected from nature, from ourselves, from who we are, who we truly are. And that disconnection creates a lot of pain for a lot of people. And I guess who I'm thinking about the most right now is youth. When this is part of indigenous wisdom too, to think about our elders, to think about our children, which is something that Western civilization has forgotten about, right? Because we put our elders away, and our children now are, the parents are the phones and video games. And without that guidance from the grandparents and from the parents, because everybody's too busy and there's so much disconnect, we have a lot of turmoil in the hearts of our youth. And they're causing a lot of damage too to many, many people. And for youth right now, the suicide rate is rocketing. It's been spiking. And so for me, that's where indigenous wisdom can come in to bring that connection back. And that part of that knowing for me is through my experience. And what it did for me is I reconnected with my indigeneity through the elements, through sitting with the fire and a ceremonial fire. So not, yes, a fire, and any fire can be healing, but a ceremonial fire, a little bit different, that can bring back those memories of who we are and bring back that connection to ourselves and connect us to who we really are. And I think that's where there's so much that indigenous wisdom has to offer us, and what we can learn from it if we can find a teacher and somebody who can support us and guide us in that journey of reclaiming our indigenous heritage. Like Lisa says, we're all indigenous, and we just have to remember that that's who we are. And but we've gotten so caught up in other things, like the material things, right? The things that they're meant to be tools, but we are now acting as if our technology is our gods. So instead of having reverence to nature and to God and creation and the stars, we have, we're paying attention to our technology more than anything else. So I think that's incredibly painful for us. Not that we use it as a tool. It's a tool. It's not God. Our phones and our video games and those things is not. It's just a tool that we can use to communicate, right? But we're taking it much beyond that. So for me, there's just so much healing that can happen through indigenous wisdom if it's done in the right way too. If we're honoring and holding reverence to it, asking for it to guide and help us, and then we have to sit and listen and just sit down and listen and stop our thinking, stop the monkey mind, what we call it in meditation. Stop the monkey mind and just watch the fire, just watch how the water flows, right? And that can bring us, and now there's research, right, to support that being in nature is balancing, right, earthing and doing all of those kinds of things. Because there's electrical charges in our bodies that we create, and earth brings us back to a balance, rebalancing those electrical charges in our body. So those are things that it's an everyday practice. It's an everyday practice. So pretty much every day, even if I can't, because I live in the city, it's a suburban life, but I might not be able to go to the forest, but I can go in my backyard or my front yard, and I can take my shoes off and I can sit down right there on the earth and just breathe. And that is how sometimes I need to lay down. Sometimes I'm just laying down flat because there's so many things going on, the chaos that we're experiencing on a global level, and it affects us. We're all connected to each other. So if somebody's experiencing something, a pain or a loss somewhere on the planet, I feel it in my body. I might not be conscious of what's happening, but I feel it. And what do I do with that? Well, I need to give it back, give that energy back. So I sit on the earth, or I sit with the fire, or consciously drink a glass of water, even, consciously asking for the water to help me to ground and help me to clear, and, little things that we take for granted, like having access to water. So that's my little tidbit on that.
Oh my goodness. I really, really appreciate you sharing all of that, but especially at the end, just some little things that people can do, because I do think that there are a lot of people out there that are, you know, it's like swimming in this big soup, like you said, this chaos, and how do you get out of it? How do you even unplug, like the phones, the technology? It's not just that it's not just always a choice. It's like they're literally an addictive now, like they're created to be addictive. And how do you get out of that addiction? And so you just shared some real powerful ways, that simple as they are. Just take a moment, lay on the earth, say a prayer, bless your water that you're going to drink. Little things like that make a difference. Little things. It's not a whole lot that you have to do, but it kind of turns us towards that direction, right? Thank you. I think that's just the wisdom, people, the nuggets of the gems of wisdom, I think that the world needs right now. Just little steps that people can do to come out of that chaos. Marilyn, do you have anything to add? I'm sure you do. Your beautiful wisdom.
What was the question?
How would you, what do you have to say about the world, the things happening in the world right now, and how you see indigenous wisdom helping, connecting to that somehow?
I think the world is out of control, and that we've already been tested with some certain things, and that it's supposed to be, to me, it's supposed to be a message to where we're supposed to wake up our inner spirit, our connections to the earth, and listen, pay attention, and there's a reality to what's going on right now. It's here, it's facing us, it has faced us, and we lost many lives. I think that it all begins with us and how we think, and how we fall far apart from our reasons to be on the earth, and the reasons for the earth, what their laws are, the fundamental laws. Because right now everything is out of proportion, and it's always like the big people, the ones that have the money, and the white skinned people, it's always them that are in control, and they say what, with the money that they have. Just like we had a meeting last month, and we wrote to the president to stop that mining of helium. They wanted to mine helium, and they make it sound like, oh, there's a lot of money that would come out of it. They're going to help a lot of projects that are even, they make it sound so good and delicious, but they're distracting the earth. There's a big destruction happening when that happens. When you pull something out of nature, that's really not good, because the way I see it, or the way we see it, or some people see it, is that it's almost
comparable to if we were to cut ourselves open and take out what's inside our body, and you know, they're doing that to Mother Earth. So I would say just leave everything alone. But who's gonna listen? You know, no, I don't think money is the big talk now, and it's always been that way. And just, things are just out of control. So in this world right now, it's just, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's just really awful. Like, are we still going to be here 20 years from now? You know, the way it is going, it's that scary. And I'm in the middle of just getting rid of my truck because it uses gas. Getting rid of my vehicles and just not drive that much anymore, and maybe get a electric. Still, even though if it's electric, you're still burning energy somewhere. You know, they make it sound like burning electricity is safe, but it comes from somewhere. So I hope to see my grandkids and my great grandkids. And I'm hoping that they're still going to be the trees that we have, and plants, and sheep. I'm hoping that we are able still to plant, because we're really in a bad drought here in the Southwest. We're pretty lucky to have water like when it rains. So it's pretty dry. We've been trying to plant for the last 4 or 5 years. Nothing grows out. There's just twisters going around. It's just windy. It's been a weird time so far. It's been that way, and it's been weirdo because it's not raining. We're supposed to have a lot of rain in April. It didn't happen, and these streams are drying up. And the air is just dry. But somewhere, somehow, some people have to wake up and learn to protect the earth.
Marilyn, can you say anything? Are there any prophecies that you go by, or?
Yeah, we're in a state of crisis, and the way we can tell is because of the drought. And the way the diseases are coming around, and also there's more sick people, and the trees are dying here in the Southwest. We have orange trees everywhere. Juniper trees are turning orange. It's because of the drought, and the bugs are eating up the trees. So all across the mountains, half of the trees are dead. If you come to the Southwest, it's like that because of the drought. Yeah, so it's just sad. Well, I used to be told that when that starts happening, we're in a state of crisis. The human beings are in dire need to make these. Maybe it's too late, but it's going and it's spinning out in the wrong direction. And the way I was told was that first my grandma told me that when the trees in the future, she's gone now, she said, be careful in the future. It's not good When the trees start turning orange, you know we're at the end of times. So that's happening right now. And then the other vision that was held was that was one of the things that will start disappearing are our green trees, our green bushes, anything green will start disappearing.
In the
And
prophecy,
our world is going to be like Mars.
wow. In the prophecy, is there any preparations that are recommended or like shared about what we should do?
While the world cycles and in our history, in our creation story, there was a time and place where this happened, and it was a lady that was born half human and half spirit on a sacred mountain, and she was of nature, and she was our savior, like Jesus Christ was the savior of the Christians, but this white child woman was our savior. And it took two individuals, two people praying every morning and every evening, meditating for hope. And when she was brought by the nature onto the mountain, and she was made, with water, with lightning, with rain, with all the natural elements brought together. They heard the first bird sing, and all the plants and the trees, and then there was a rainbow. They started moving again. So she brought hope to the earth. So this is a cycle, how we talk about the first world, second world, third world, fourth world. There's going to be a fifth and sixth world.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, the earth is going to recycle. Yeah, in a different way.
Yeah, thank you. That's encouraging. We just have
Yeah.
to do what we can do right now and keep the prayers going, right? Keep the
Yeah,
prayers
meditation.
going. Well, maybe speaking of prayers and spending time with just, holding space for each other and how we hold space for others in healing. All of us are healers, and we do that in our lives. And you have this vision that you've been cultivating called the Luna Isol Sanctuary. And I'd love to hear you share some more about this vision, and how, how that's a vehicle for bringing some of this wisdom into your communities and what you're imagining it to be. Lisa or Laura, whoever would like to share first about it, and then pass it on.
So the sanctuary was, I don't know if Lisa's able to be there, but they came up conversations that Lisa and I had for years. And how long, I don't even know how long we were talking about. But, I just remember sitting on the grass at New Mexico State University when I was still a student. And we were sitting on the grass and just envisioning what a place for healing could look like, what that could be and what that could look like, because what we were experiencing in academia was not it. So we just had lots of conversations about, sanctuary, and envisioning this sanctuary, this space where we could, hold space for each other and just heal and just sit. I mean, really just sit in ceremony, sit in prayer. sit around the fire, sit outside, or just listen to the sound of the drum. And I mean, really simple. I mean, that's how I thought about it. I don't know, Lisa. So, so based on that, I was kind of kicked out of academia. And I was told by the universe, well, now what are you going to do? Well, now you're going to do your work as a healer. And so from there, I created the nonprofit and just a space for us to bring those energies and those medicines to the now. And we still it's still a virtual space right now, but we're seeking land and support for a space so that we can do these things that we're talking about. Lisa, definitely add more to that.
Well, um, yeah, I mean, that pretty much summed it up in some ways, as counseling educators. I was a professor, and Marilyn and Laura were doctoral students in the program, and so there was so many issues that we needed to address. And when it came down to it, the Western lifestyle and the way that things were going was so stressful that the only way that we could make sense of it was to step outside of it. So that's why we created an opportunity through a program, Indigenous Ways of Knowing and Counseling, so that we could get away, could get into nature and learn from the plants. But so the sanctuary, we've been talking about sanctuary for a long time. At one point, I had purchased 5 acres of land, or attempted to purchase 5 acres of land that was pretty primitive land, and we built a teepee grounds on it, a sweat lodge up there, and we had ceremony, and we were able to spend some time. I had one full year that I just spent around the clock living on that land, and it just envisioning that healing. And even though things happened and that didn't take place, we learned a lot when we were on that land in prayer. We spent a lot of time in prayer there, and the land spoke to us. And one of the things that I heard was to go home, and to help my people. And I have family both in New Mexico and here. I got spread out because we used to live in family units, and now I'm traveling back and forth. But so and so many other healers that I know that don't have a place to land, that don't come from a great amount of money. We know if you want alternative healing modalities, you can go pay a lot of money down at the spa down the road, and there's some very good therapies down there. But that's not how a lot of us operate from an indigenous perspective. It's not about money, it's about service. And to have a place in nature where we can heal and create an opportunity to provide service in the way that we were meant to be, without all of the convoluted thoughts of how am I going to pay for this? How am I going to get there? All of us have at some point lived in a tent and served, and every single one of us was in Standing Rock, and it was freezing cold weather, sleeping in a teepee. And we know that those things, that it's possible. It's possible to find community and to find love and to find yourself in those kinds of things. So getting into nature with the elements of nature and learning about that is healing. There's scientific evidence to show grounding, walking barefoot on the earth, mineralizing ourselves through the soils of the earth. All of those things are there. So Luna Soul Sanctuary, the ultimate is to, yeah, we have this beautiful virtual space, and we do have a conference. We're getting ready to have our second annual Luna Soul Sanctuary conference, and to further this vision. But it's really so that we can support one another as healers, kind of like a heal the healers kind of space. Not a place to make money, but a place where we can live in and continue to grow indigenously. And so, women supporting women, not just women, I mean, we all have beautiful spouses or beautiful things, but some of us have a lot of healing from the relationships we've been in. So there is a primary focus on women, and and on empowerment that's happening right now, because this is Mother Earth, Mother Earth, the feminine, and that nurturer. And that's what we are. Whether we have children, we don't have children, what's going on, we're nurturers, we're the healers, we're the medicine people. And so it's time for us to take our role. And so where we can support people in the space to do that, to be on the land with plants and water and air, away from the sounds of of everyday life, because the sounds of nature is the highest vibration. It's the vibration that brings us to spirit. The sounds of technology brings us away from that. And so if we want to sit in with our natural way of being ourselves, who we are meant to be, Wakalet, we need to get back into nature and give ourselves, get away from the hustle and bustle and stressors, and find that time to sit and support each other and sit by the fire and do ceremony, like Lauda was talking about. That's what we found to be the most healing, to come back to a very simple way of living on the earth. And, Marilyn, her walk too, all of us are healers. Marilyn has an incredibly special role, very specific and ordained, in her role as a community person. And Lauda and I, it's like we created this conference, from my point of view, just to get Marilyn away so we could give her some love, because she's in service 24/7. Those, we're all in service 24/7 when it comes down to those prayers, but when you have a population of people that is dealing with the trauma at such a high level, like is on our reservations. I'm also working with my father, with our Tribal Warriors Society as an executive director, and we're working with the regaining of our culture and our language in order for us to heal and to be back on the land. So this is, we're all working on these things together, and I'll just stop with that. But Luna Soul Sanctuary, we are currently writing a strategic plan. We are envisioning that place, that space in nature with water, trees, all these things. We're envisioning that. We're putting those thoughts out there, and so that's a big push. It's a big primary goal. Meeting virtually is beautiful. At some point, we'll be able to have these spaces on a land where we can heal together, and then we can go back out to our respective communities and serve the way that we do. So that's all I'll say about that. It's a beautiful vision, and so it's life work. It's the way of the future for all of us healers who try to walk this world. We're not left brain thinkers, so to speak. So anyway, so I just want to put these prayers out there too. That anybody who is listening to this and is interested in supporting some of the work that we're doing. Our focus is indigenous ways of knowing. Our focus is on empowerment, to relive those things and to support each other in our healing modalities as we move forward, and to make these healing modalities accessible to populations who would not normally get them, because new age healing is so expensive. When you go to a spa, you pay a lot of money. It's a big privilege to do that, but not a lot of our people are money driven. There's a different paradigm. And so that kind of thing doesn't fall through our fingers. Instead, we have to go back and see, what did our ancestors do? How did our people do it? What does the earth have to offer us? The best mineralizing drinks, plant medicines that are master plant teachers, the animals, the way that they live, the bears, the way they sleep all through the winter. There's so much to learn from nature. So I'll just say that much. Miyangoa. Mibi, it's good to be here. Thank you, Jewel. And it's just always an honor to be with my sisters, because we share a heart, really strong heart. So
Yes.
meet Lau
Yes.
Dielo.
Yes, indeed. In fact, Lisa, you were just reminding me, like, I just want to say this memory, because it really speaks to what you were saying about how your community on the reservation often doesn't have access to the stuff that is more in the the Western modern world, whatever. Standing Rock was such an interesting, that medic camp where we had body work in 1 year and herbal medicine in 1 year, and every kind of alternative, chiropractic and everything, all of that was there available for free. And it was so beautiful to see so many of the people, the tribal members, receive from these healings there, that they had never had a massage and never had, these kinds of treatments. And it was so beautiful to see that, and to be educated from my standpoint of how, of that, difference, in the worlds, in the cultures. So I'm imagining that you and your sanctuary will be bringing more and more of this kind of healing to people that don't have access to it. That's what I'm hearing you say. Marilyn, what would you like to share about the Luna Soul Sanctuary?
We have been putting up a retreat for women that were interested in healing almost every year, I think. This year we're going to have it at Lake Tahoe this fall, and it's just this awesome place to be, just to get away and being with healers, like-minded people, and just learning from each other, listening to each other. And we're really like from different areas of the US, but when we come together, it seems like we are really specially connected. And we've been sitting up in ceremonies together for so many years, and that the connections that we make is really not superficial, but it's really great. Like it's something you can hold on to when you're by yourself. It brings that strength, and we all have challenges, and we all understand each other. Um, and we stay connected throughout the year, and we have our monthly meetings. We have we are trying to raise money, grants. We help women, especially, and kids. Well, I've been focusing on the kids and women more often than because I feel like they're the ones that are need help the most, and they usually fall through the cracks. And we come across all different nations, all different ethnic groups. No one's the same. And I like that, the diversity that it brings to the group. And it's still young. It's still going through its development phase. We are going to be offering classes, and each one of us will have present our own ways of healing, and that and I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because everyone in this world has a special gift, and they just need to be guided.
Thank you, Marilyn. It really seems like, that the world is dreaming, many of us giving these things in our dreams, the healing sanctuary vision, to hold spaces of healing for each other and to have hubs of healing. I'm imagining hubs of healing all over the world. And I've talked to other healers that are also, this dream is kind of starting to come up for people, and everybody has a unique version of the dream. And I love your version of this beautiful dream, and it just seems like the earth is dreaming it, like it's asking us to come into this holding space for the healing of humanity, and just taking our part, stepping into what that is. So thank you for doing your beautiful parts and your roles in our healing in this time of the earth, in this incredible time that we're living together, that we chose to be here together. So I feel very grateful and very honored to be here with all of you and to share this time with you. And I think we'll go ahead and have a little closing round, and any last things you want to say or prayers that you want to make to close us off with would be lovely. So, Lisa?
Looks like my lighting changed. Uh-oh. I don't know what that's about. Let me scoot over. Um, well, I just, just want to say thank you. And Julia, thank you for your work. We've gotten to know each other for a while now. And I didn't get to tell this story in the beginning, but I kind of want to end with this story of Julia because she brought this podcast together and is getting this information out. But I met Julia at Standing Rock, and I was in charge I had kind of taken a charge of the mental wellness teepee for a short period of time during the No Dapple campaign and what was happening out at Standing Rock. And the wellness teepee was really a central location for people to come together to figure out what to do. It was freezing cold out there, and there was a lot of activity going on. People from all over the world were showing up, and it was very overwhelming at times. And so every day at noon we would have these meetings, and and anybody who wanted to volunteer time for the weekend or the next 3 or 4 days could come in together, and then we would brief them on what was going on and what needed to be done. And so Julia came to one of these meetings, and we were all going around introducing them. Everybody was introducing themselves, and I was letting people know right away, if you have a license, if you're a licensed therapist or this kind of thing, and you're concerned about confidentiality, or those kinds of things, or if you're concerned about losing about practice or any of those kinds of things, I would advise was no dealing with some pretty serious kinds of things at this time, with the weather so bad. And Julia just came in and introduced herself as a clergy. And I remember, as a Native person, everything inside of me at that moment was like, clergy, like what are you doing here? And it was like
Minister.
my bias and the things that I was raised with. Sure, yeah, but my bias and the things that I was raised with just hitting me right in the face. That I am my mom is white. I'm part European too. I'm a half breed, but I was raised on the reservation, and so I always identified Native because that's how the world treated me. As a brown woman, they didn't treat me that I was half and half. I came out brown. That's how I got treated. That was my experience in the world. And so all of those things that, kind of came up, like here you are at Standing Rock and you're bringing in, your religion. And anyway, the time went by, and I, as Julia and I began to share our hearts, there were, the differences began to dissolve because the love that we shared and the work that we were doing in the community was so intense. And we just gathered the women that were really seriously there to bring prayer, and we had a prayer yurt. We were able to actually move some things. And Lauda, you spent, I don't know, a number of weeks with me as well, moving through that cold weather. Um, and really, my heart was so encouraged that there were so many healers that came to help. And I was very impressed that people from all over the world standing up to speak for clean water, and standing up beside the Lakota people who have shared their ceremony with numerous people, where their sweat lodges, Lakota sweat lodges, are all over the world. Their own bletches. There's, all the kinds of ceremonial things to reconnect that they've learned have been shared all over the world. So people showed up to stand with them, and I was so encouraged in spite of some of the challenges that we were experiencing in that camp. But again, a need for a space, and that's what we did at Standing Rock, is we created a prayer space, and that's what we're doing here too with Luna Yisoul Sanctuary. And so I realized that's not a prayer, but it is a prayer. Words are prayers, thoughts are creations. What we think about, we're eventually going to speak about. And what we speak carries a vibration. It carries the vibration of the thoughts that are connected to our soul. And when that soul has a channel to reach a spirit, then we're just, we're bringing forth that spirit. So, um, words are prayers, and my prayer is that everyone would hear that call at some place, to create these spaces where people can come together and they can heal and get away from the city and the things that are causing the problems with drugs and alcohol and addictions and all those things, and get back to nature, which is a true healer. That we came here as organic beings. We can reconnect and bridge even that space between the physical and the spiritual, simply by being still and recognizing who we are. There's so much to learn. I realize this might sound kind of, I don't know how it sounds, but it's universal consciousness that we're all connected. Meet lau dielo, all my relations, mitakwiasin. That's how we say it in our prayers. We're all related. Digum hiki angau huleo. We're all doing it together with our hands. We're working together to make a beautiful place for our children, for our future generations. So, mianga wamibi'i. Thanks.
Thank you. Laura, would you have any?
What more can I add after Lisa after Lisa shares her words? One of my practices for a while now has been to go to gratitude. To stay in gratitude, and it's the one thing I used to teach my clients when I used to do therapy. People who are depressed or anxious, it's the simplest thing that we can do is have gratitude. What can you be grateful for, right? And even when we're really low and it's really hard to find something to be grateful for, find something to be grateful for. There's always something that we can be grateful for, even if it's the smallest possible thing. So, and that'll just end with that, just really appreciating this invitation for this sharing, and just really grateful for your energy and your presence, Jewel, and your vision for wanting to see a better world too. That's what I see in you, and just this desire to connect people and to bring people together and to help people to heal. And so that's beautiful. So I'm grateful for you and meeting you in this little bit of time that we've gotten to know each other. And it's always a gift to spend time with my sisters, Marilyn and Lisa. And we were in a ceremony together one time, and Lisa's daughter called us, what does she call us? She calls us the pea pod. and and we just looked at each other and just started laughing, because what is that? What's the pea pod?
It was a doctor pod. He called us the doctor pod. 3 doctors.
And yeah, there's just, we just have such a strong love for each other and this connection with each other, even though, yes, we come from different places, but like Lisa said, we share one heart. And I'm so grateful for that relationship that we have with each other. And that has been incredibly healing for me. And so I'm just really grateful for you, Lisa, for you, Marilyn, and the opportunity that we've had to come back and reconnect with each other in this life, in this physical body that we're in right now, and to get to play together again here, and play and pray and just support each other. And during this time that we're living through, this such difficult time, but we get to see the beauty in each other. And so thank you for that. And I'll just end with that. Tlasokamati.
Thank you. Beautiful. Marilyn, do you have some closing words or prayers that you'd like to offer?
I'm losing myself. Hold on. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Joel, for inviting us. And thanks, Lisa. It's always nice to hear you and your wisdom. Thank you, Sister Lauda, for And she does this interviews too. She had her own podcast, and we were going through the 9 healing states, talking about each states, the healing states for people that are surviving trauma, so survivors. So makes me really think about who I am and what I like to share with everyone else. It's always challenging, but yet also good because there is. I always tell my patients when they're having problems is that there's always good and evil in this world, and that in order to fight the evil, we have to walk in the light. And the light is the plants that we utilize. The light is the healing objects that we use to pray, and our ceremonies. Those things bring us, help us to be in the light. So I think our greatest enemies are our greatest things we have to fight for is within ourselves, and that's when we need each other, is to help ourselves, because in our mind we think we know everything, but when we start wanting to evaluate who we really are, we need that reflection to see who we are, and mirrors, and other people provide that for us. And I like to be a mirror for someone as well, and do a reflection. I cannot change anyone. I can only be a good reflection, and with some guidance. Uh, been in the counseling field so long that I guess it just comes second nature to me now. But I just pray that all the people that are doing good in this world, they continue to strive for it, for the goodness of all mankind, and for all the plants and everything that's alive on this earth, for all the mountains and everything on this earth, that we should continue to survive in a good way without harming our world, but to also seek peace within ourselves. Like Lisa says, peace, goodness comes from within us first, and through those vibrations, we begin to send out those positive vibrations, and the more we do that, the more connections we make. Even if it's all the way around the world, we're going to be doing well, doing good for others. That's all.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. And I'll just I'll close. Actually, I think I'm going to just share in reply to Lisa's little story, because I feel like it's really a perfect lesson. And also, I know I said minister, not clergy, because there is a big difference between clergy and minister. So clergy is more like, I think, but any case, either way, I just want to say the reason why I think it's kind of funny. The reason why I mentioned that I was a minister is because I felt like I had to come up with a credential so that I'm covered to counsel people, because that's why I got it, is to do counseling, to do spiritual counseling. So I'm legally covered. And I'm like the least religious minister, and it's really not it was not my carrying card. But it's funny that I said that to Lisa, and and it was just such an interesting moment. And what it taught me was, because I'm coming from this very Western colonized white way of thinking of like, you've got to have your, you know, you got to have your carrying card, you got to have your credential, you've got to have your, you know, your ducks in a row, right? You know, and it really was a big piece of my unlearning, my undoing in that moment. The whole Standing Rock was in complete unraveling of ego for me. And before, you know, I've been in various aspects of that my whole life, but that was a huge piece of it. And it was like the identities of who we think we are and what we're here doing. So it was a really interesting moment, and I'm glad you brought that story forth, but I wanted to share my side of it. I hope that's okay. Um, but just to share that it was also a piece of unlearning. We both had our unlearning around it. So I thought that was really, really beautiful. And may we
That's what I was
continue
going
to,
to say. I
huh?
learned a lot. That's
Yeah,
what I was going to say. I learned a lot. You know, I had to face myself. So it was
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, we both, I mean, the ego is just so sneaky. It's in all of us, you know, we're nobody's exempt, no culture's exempt. It's like, it's the human condition, but some cultures have more of it, right? You know, it's harder, like the colonizing culture is just so full of like, we are the way, you know, we're going to do it our way. And that's what I really have had to, you know, unravel in myself. And a lot of people that came to Standing Rock did, you know, they decolonizing process. And I really think that that is what is needed in the world right now, is just for us to decolonize ourselves. So, you know, so much to get out of that sense of entitlement and ego, into to remembering that we're all connected, we're all equal, and no culture is, you know, more entitled. so so that, thank you, Lisa, and you've taught me a lot, and I really appreciate you so much, so deeply, so grateful. And I'm so grateful for connecting with all of you and having this time together, and on this beautiful time of the earth, of the solstice, and just reminding everybody just to take that moment, as Laura says, take that moment and lay on the earth, bless your water, take a moment of stillness, as Lisa has shared, as Marilyn has shared, just listen to the nature and, you know, remember who you are. That's what's needed today, the simple and the humble. So with that, I want to just thank everybody who's listening. I hope some words that were spoken somewhere have touched the hearts out there. And thank you for joining us. Blessings.